Let's talk about one of the biggest debates in the gaming world right now. Do you really need a 120Hz TV for gaming? If you've been shopping around for a new TV or building out your dream setup, you've probably seen 120Hz plastered all over the specs and marketing. It sounds impressive, it looks premium, and it definitely costs more. But is it truly necessary for the average gamer? Or is it just another spec that sounds cooler than it actually is? Let's break it down and see what really matters when it comes to refresh rates, gaming performance, and whether a 120Hz TV is worth the upgrade. To start with, let's get clear on what 120Hz even means. A TV's refresh rate is simply the number of times it refreshes the image on screen every second. So a 60Hz TV refreshes the picture 60 times per second, while a 120Hz TV does it 120 times. In theory, the more frequently the image is refreshed, the smoother and more fluid motion will look, especially during fast action scenes or when you're whipping the camera around in a game. Now that sounds like a no-brainer, right? Smoother is better. But it's not quite that simple. Just because your TV can refresh 120 times per second doesn't mean the game you're playing is sending 120 frames per second to the screen. You need both a capable display and a source, like a game console or PC, that can actually output high frame rates to take advantage of that refresh rate. That brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, your gaming hardware. If you're gaming on a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, yes, both consoles do support 120 FPS gaming, but only in select titles. We're talking games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Fortnite, Halo Infinite, and a handful of others. Not every game is optimized for high frame rates, and many graphically intense titles still cap at 30 or 60 FPS to prioritize visuals over speed. On the PC side, you've got way more flexibility. A powerful gaming rig with a high-end GPU can definitely push 120 FPS or more, especially in competitive games like Valorant, CSGO, or Overwatch 2. So if you're a PC gamer and your rig is up to the task, a 120Hz TV could make a noticeable difference, but only if you're playing those high frame rate games and you're actually hitting those numbers consistently. But even assuming your console or PC can deliver 120 frames per second, there's another catch. Not all TVs handle 120Hz equally well. You'll need to make sure the TV supports native 120Hz at 4K, not just a simulated or effective refresh rate. Some TVs advertise motion smoothing or artificial frame interpolation features that mimic the feel of 120Hz, but that's not the same thing. For actual 120Hz gaming, look for HDMI 2.1 ports, which allow the necessary bandwidth for 4K at 120Hz. And ideally, the TV should support features like variable refresh rate, VRR, and auto low latency mode to keep things responsive and smooth. So what does this all mean for you? The person sitting on their couch trying to figure out whether to pull the trigger on a fancy new TV? Here's where it gets interesting. For most casual gamers, those who play story-driven games, enjoy single-player titles, or mostly game at 30 to 60 frames per second, a 60Hz TV is absolutely fine. In fact, a great 60Hz panel with excellent color accuracy, contrast, and HDR performance might actually give you a better visual experience than a cheap 120Hz TV with poor black levels or weak processing. If your favorite games aren't running at 120 FPS, you're not really gaining anything by having a 120Hz panel. It's like buying a sports car but never leaving the neighborhood. The potential is there, but it's not being used. That said, for competitive gamers, the story is different. If you play fast-paced multiplayer games where split-second reactions matter, think shooters, racing games, or fighting titles, the smoothness of 120Hz really does help. The reduced motion blur, quicker response time, and overall fluidity can make your gameplay feel more connected and precise. You'll notice snappier aim, cleaner motion tracking, and a general sense of responsiveness that's hard to explain until you feel it. It's also worth mentioning that gaming at higher refresh rates can actually reduce input lag, not just visually, but in how fast your controller inputs are registered on screen. Combine that with low latency modes and VRR, and a high refresh TV can start to make a difference, even in less obvious ways. But let's not forget about cost. TVs with full HDMI 2.1 support and native 120Hz panels tend to be significantly more expensive. You'll be looking at mid to high-end models from LG, Samsung, Sony, and others, often in the $800 to $1,500 plus range depending on size and features. So you have to ask yourself, is the cost difference worth the benefit based on the games you play and how sensitive you are to motion clarity? There's also the matter of future-proofing. Even if you don't play 120 FPS games now, that number is becoming more common. Developers are increasingly offering performance modes that target 120 FPS, especially as console optimization improves and more games give players the choice between visual quality and frame rate. So if you're planning to keep your TV for several years, investing in a 120Hz display might be a smart way to stay ready for what's coming. That said, future-proofing shouldn't come at the cost of your current experience. A TV is more than just a gaming monitor. It's also what you'll be watching movies and streaming content on, possibly every day. So things like local dimming, peak brightness, color accuracy, and viewing angles matter too. You don't want to compromise all of that just to chase a spec that you might only use in a few titles. At the end of the day, the decision comes down to your gaming habits, your expectations, and your budget. If you're a casual gamer or mostly stick to story-rich single-player games, you're probably better off with a high-quality 60Hz TV that nails picture quality, contrast, and HDR. You won't be missing out on much, and you can save a good chunk of money in the process. But if you're into competitive gaming, or you just want the absolute smoothest and most responsive gameplay possible, and your console or PC can deliver the frames, then yes, a 120Hz TV can be a worthy upgrade. Especially when paired with HDMI 2.1, VRR, and low input lag, it can give you that edge and elevate your experience in ways that are subtle but satisfying. So, do you really need a 120Hz TV for gaming? Probably not. But if your setup and play style demand it, and your wallet can handle it, it's definitely something worth considering. Just make sure the rest of your gear is ready to take advantage of it, or you might be paying for a feature you're not really using. That's it for today's deep dive. If you found this breakdown helpful, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment below. Are you gaming on 60Hz or 120Hz? Have you noticed a difference? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, game on and take care.